Yo, what is going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining in. So, I freaking love the cyberpunk genre, not only in books, but also in visual media. I just love the aesthetic that you expect to see within games like Cyberpunk 2077 and Deus Ex. And of course, I love the movies and TV shows that you see within this genre as well, like The Matrix, Blade Runner, Edge Runners, Tron, Altered Carbon, and so much more. And in this video, I'm going to go over 3 essential cyberpunk reads to get started within the genre. I'm also going to mention a couple honorable mentions as well that you can pick up after you read these 3 if you're really enjoying it so far. Now, when it comes to books, I know there's a fluid definition in terms of what cyberpunk really is. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to use a definition that was given to me by an author named Tim Hawken, who is also a cyberpunk author, who simply defined it to me as high-tech and low life. So what are my 3 essential reads within the genre? Well, number 1 is going to be Neuromancer by William Gibson. Number 2 is going to be Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. And number 3 is going to be Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. Each of these 3 reads can definitely be considered cyberpunk, but I can tell you that each read was completely different and unique and a whole different experience. So if you're ready, let's dive into it. High tech and low life. What does this even mean? To expand on this a little bit, the cyberpunk genre is a subgenre of sci-fi that focuses heavily on technology like AI, cybernetic body modifications, virtual reality, and other computer-based technology that is just commonplace within society. And low life meaning a decaying dystopian world filled with vandals, outcasts, and in other words, punks. Neuromancer, Snow Crash, and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep all fit within this definition. But what are their similarities? What are their differences? And most importantly, what can you expect to find within your read of these books? I first wanted to start with the book that basically pioneered the genre, with that being Neuromancer by William Gibson. This book was published back in the 80s, so the concept and the idea of the internet and home computers was still pretty new and unknown to a lot of people. This book even popularized the word cyberspace, which is now commonplace in a lot of books within this genre. Cyberspace meaning the data-driven landscape that we know as virtual reality, which is becoming more and more mainstream in today's society. So, Neuromancer, high tech and low life? Yes, absolutely. Both these elements play a huge role within the story. So what is Neuromancer all about? And in the story, we follow our main character, Case, who is a cyber cowboy and, in other words, a hacker, who is recruited into a group to infiltrate a heavily guarded corporation within cyberspace and confront a rogue AI. And a lot of these words like hacker, cyberspace, AI are all pretty common to us in today's world, but this is back in the 80s where this is all just brand new and unknown to a lot of people. So the story was definitely way ahead of its time, but this is a storyline that feels like it could easily fit within the Cyberpunk 2077 game. The world building within this book is pushed to the absolute max, immersing you into a gritty neon-drenched world that felt very similar to Night City in Cyberpunk 2077. What's funny is that there's actually a city in this book called Night City. Technology surrounds you almost on every single page, from cybernetic implants, beauty enhancers, cyber decks that transport you into cyberspace, holographic projections, and so much more. I really enjoyed my read through Neuromancer, and I can't wait to get back to it again, and also read the sequels in the series, which is called The Sprawl. Also, this book is only like 250 pages, so it's not a huge commitment if you want to pick this one up first. One thing though I do want to note is that it took me a little bit to get into it, just because of the technical jargon that is thrown at your face at the very beginning. I had to reread the first 50 pages about 3 times to fully grasp what was being told to me. But overall, a fantastic first read when diving into the cyberpunk genre. Alright, the next book that I wanted to bring up was Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. And this exact copy is the Easton Press Special Edition, which looks absolutely fantastic, by the way, with that nice gold sheen to it. Is this a story that has high tech and low life? Yes again. This story was a complete wild ride for me, especially for our main protagonist, and guess what? Our main character's name is Hero Protagonist, not a name you can easily forget. In this story, we follow Hero, who is a freelance hacker who also delivers pizza for the mafia, who happens upon a virus that has the potential to wreak havoc across all society. So yeah, there's a lot going on here, and this is another book that's a great example of it being way ahead of its time in terms of the virtual reality landscape, which in the story is known as the metaverse. Sound a little bit familiar? This book came out in the early 90s, but it basically just described perfectly what we see today in games like VR chat, in the metaverse, and more soon to come. This book heavily focused on the corporate ruling element within this genre, where large corporations put the needs of humans on the back burner and simply focus on getting more power and more profit. There's also a huge focus on linguistics within this story, how language shapes reality and virtual reality. I really enjoyed this component within the story because I just love how language is used to further a narrative. And I always found it interesting to see how language is used. It's basically a central block in all aspects of society. And of course, technology is another strong focus within the story, like virtual reality, skateboards that have adaptive wheels, robot killing dogs, body modifications, and so much more. I love my read through this book, and I would highly recommend it. Also, if you enjoy satirical type of writing, because there's a lot of it. Also want to make a quick note that there is a relationship in this story that's a little bit questionable in terms of the age between the two, but past that, great story. Now my next pick is going to be Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. Now this specific edition right here is the Folio Society edition that's also packed with a Scanner Darkly, which has this cool looking cover on the back as well. Now I know it's very debatable if Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is really considered cyberpunk, but I think the best way to describe it is alpha cyberpunk. This is a story that has cyberpunk elements before the term cyberpunk even really became popularized. And a quick FYI for anyone who does not know, this is a story that inspired the movie Blade Runner. So, does Android's Dream of Electric Sheep feature high-tech and low-life? Yes. Yes, it does. One of the main components within the story is AI in terms of androids trying to live their own lives outside the essential enslavement that we put upon them. Also, this heavily delves into the dystopian element commonly found within the genre as well, where decay surrounds almost all society on Earth as ever-growing with kibble or dust. And just like in the movie, we follow our main character being Rick Deckard, who is a bounty hunter who is on the search for rogue androids who pose a threat to society, where it's his job to retire them. This book by far is the most existential, making you constantly question, what does it mean to be human? There's also a huge religious component within the story that can be interpreted and experienced in multiple ways. There's also one big sensational expose within the story that helps explore ethical and philosophical issues of religion, empathy, and survival. Something that I found that was pretty interesting within this read is that if you came into this without reading the book and only watching the movie, you'd expect the atmosphere to feel somewhat similar in terms of the city being filled with ads and neon signs everywhere. But this really was not the case within the story. Just not what you typically think of when you think of the word cyberpunk in terms of the city and the atmosphere. So overall, I think Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is a great book to dive into this genre, even though it's alpha cyberpunk. So there we have it. Those are my 3 essential cyberpunk reads, in my opinion, that I think would be great starters for you to dive into the genre. Each story is completely unique and distinct and has a different experience when reading through it, even though they're all cyberpunk. In terms of the overall overarching element that I found most stood out to me in each of these reads was actually different. For Neuromancer, it was immersion. For Snow Crash, it was character driven. And for Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, it was thought-provoking big ideas. Now, in terms of what you get out of these stories, it could be different. So for my honorable mentions, those are going to be Cyberpunk 2077, No Coincidence, and Thrill Switch. So Cyberpunk 2077 No Coincidence actually takes place in the Cyberpunk 2077 universe, but you can definitely read this without playing the game because it's its own self-contained story that still takes place within this universe. This is a high-space action story that delves into almost all the cyberpunk elements that we talked about earlier. I really enjoyed my read through that book, and if you enjoyed the game at all, I definitely recommend picking this one up because it's just more cyberpunk fun. And my next honorable mention is going to be Thrill Switch by Tim Hawken, with this being a self-published book, with this being a cyberpunk thriller with a detective on the hunt looking for somebody that's on a killing spree within the virtual reality landscape known as the Hollows. Both of these were fantastic reads. I definitely recommend you picking both of these up, especially after you finish those 3 essential reads. And there we have it, 5 fantastic cyberpunk reads that get you started within the genre. Have you read any of these books just yet? Or do you have any suggestions in the cyberpunk genre? Because if you do, let me know down below because I probably want to check it out, with this being one of my favorite subgenres. And for sticking around this long, you've earned 1 XP token, and if you're already a subscriber, you get an extra XP token, so here you go. Have a good one, keep reading, peace.